currently, there is a tool. It's in V4 and it's under production control, and it's called Create Batches. Okay. And the purpose behind this is kind of interesting in design. Is I think this is, sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't. This might be arguably one that I didn't. So I thought it would be a great idea for the scheduler to create the schedule and create all these planned orders, and then somebody in production to convert those to batch tickets. Naive. What really happens is the scheduler creates the batch tickets and hands them to production, and production goes and does their thing. So this screen was conceived by me, and I asked Seth to do it this way, was to basically show you all planned orders that sit out here and allow you to pick a planned order and create batch tickets from it. My thought was the production manager or supervisor or something like that's using this screen, and it's creating batch tickets at the last minute, allowing us to hold the schedule open as long as possible before creating a batch ticket. And all they have to do, there are some settings up here that allows us to filter it so you can see only certain types of planned orders, etc. But ultimately what they're doing is saying, I want to make a batch ticket for that planned order. It's been on the schedule, it's been on the calendar, it was firmed, it was all that. And I can tell the system, go create batches. I've got my system configured to create equal batches to fulfill that. Probably wouldn't make sense in a traditional brewery because these would all probably be 50-barrel brews. But the point is they can split into multiple batches because I've told the system I can only make batches of a certain size. And so I need 225 or something, and so it's going and suggesting a bunch of batches for me. Technically, batches haven't been created yet. I hit the save new batches and it will create them. So this is a preview screen, giving me the ability to adjust some information. Like some people like to manually create their own batch numbers. We give you that ability. We also give you the ability, some people like to do their own lot numbers, so we give that ability. Some other things like that. So you can tweak, in effect, each of these individual batches before they're created. So in effect, you're thinking in terms of planning a total run. So I'm going to do a number of batches right behind each other. So a planned order is a run that I'm doing. And then when I go to cut batches, it'll cut them down into the size that makes sense based on the capacity of the piece of equipment. That concept has been around for a very long time for us. And honestly, it's this screen that is causing some of our internal challenges on create batches from the calendar. Because one person would say, I don't even want to come through this screen, just create it. Another person would say, I want to be able to manipulate this activity before you create batches. And so we're having to deal with both of those scenarios.
I was going to go into that direction. Like when you create a batch ticket during the normal function, the normal route, you get more adjustment opportunities, right? Does that sheet actually come out?
The actual formula?
Yeah, the formula, the adjustment, stuff like that.
No.
No.
The short answer is no. Right. This is you hit right on the source of where the challenge is. How far is enough? And so what we are doing in this scenario is I'm creating whatever that number is, 5 batches, in which case you can go in and adjust those 5 batches on the batch itself. That's where we stand today, and probably where we will. Okay, because
this basically, I could interject. This one of the challenges with this create batches and with planned order combination and things like that is exactly what you brought up. Is the assumption, the starting assumption of this is that it's a batch lunch. Is the quantity, we're just going to create what you need. The way this started was pure backflush. Give me a list of planned orders, poof, create the batches. Then it evolved from where I need to modify the planned orders before I turn them into a batch. So it kind of came to this level. And then the next step, obviously, is what you're asking, is can I modify the ingredients for my planned orders before I create the batches? So if it's a one planned order to a batch, then that's not a very difficult thing to do. But you'll find tomorrow that we have another customer who talks quite a bit during the meetings, so you know who it is. They go in and they create 150 planned orders and then turn them into 150 batches, all for different formulas. So if you can envision this screen trying to reflect 150 different formulas, all within the next week to load, that's where we started getting into nightmare scenarios. So the choice we're making really is what information is up here. So you can modify the quantities, you can play with some attributes, you can add in items to a batch that you want to create. You can do things like that, but going down to the bill of materials and to the formula itself, no, you cannot from this point.
Do you have the,
you can create the batch here and then go into batch and
Right,
then edit the batch.
certainly, right.
do you have the ability, let's just say you have like a raw material, you got a sub, and it's gonna count 10 batches, it's not normal. Could you create one, do you have like a copy batch option? Where it's a button where you could just almost like recreate that batch 9 more times?
Right.
And then
So-
it would be unique?
I think this is a absolutely terrific conversation to bring up at the developer roundtable, because I've actually got some thoughts around that. Because what ends up happening here is, let's add another complexity to it. Let's just talk about printing a batch. Do we want to follow the model that we've done forever, and that is create the batch and it goes into the big pile of batches? And we, for years, have said, is it printed or is it not? And allow you to print everything that hasn't been printed. That's a way to do it, not a problem. I'm just talking something simple like printing. Where other people will say, some of these batches go there and some of these batches go there, and what we're forcing you to do right now is bring up each batch and print them individually. So it becomes a very manual process. Part of my thought is, all right, well, what if we do this create batches and put it in a group of related batches? It's a project of batches that I want you to get out to the floor. In your case, it might be 5 batches and they all need to be adjusted. This raw material needs to be adjusted here for this group of batches. Or maybe they all need to be printed. Or they may need to do something to go to quality to be looked at before they get reviewed, whatever. Part of my thought is, what if we put these group of batches that we created in a folder, and now you can do things with them. You can selectively print them. You can navigate to each of them individually without having to go through all the pile of formulas. I've got all these formulas, and I can do things with just this small subset of formulas. Substitute ingredients, print them, send them to a different printer, change the machines.
So it's like grouping.
Yep. Yep. We've already got the scenario of you've selected a group of those you want to call a group. Maintain that group for a while. That's a thought. I see it. I hadn't really thought about what I can very clearly see in some clients where they, for this run of batches, I'm going to substitute this raw material, or I'm going to adjust this, or I'm going to do whatever. I can see that. And right now, the way to do it is you go to each individual batches, but I think there are ways that we can probably get better at that.
Okay, so I could create the batch ticket here and then just edit it and
In batch entry.
batch it. Sure.
That's right. That's right. And I think with our new drill down capability, and you've seen some examples of that on the calendar, I was able to drill into a batch ticket. I think we can leverage that a little bit of having a small subset of list of batches and be able to drill into them. In the scenario I'm talking about, you're still going into the individual batch. I'm just having to look up every batch number. I've got a list, and I can just start going down that process, get them all done, and then release, or whatever you want to call that, break open that folder, and it becomes part of the regular batches. But I think there's a lot of ways we can go with that. And tomorrow, I'm going to spend some time talking about some navigation, some ways that you can get around some data of which you may not even know exists, going from this piece of data to that piece of data, et cetera. And hopefully that'll help, but what we really are looking for is feedback from the field. Man, it would really help us if you did X, and that's a scenario.
The substitute ingredients can be a good example because for the grouping, because sometimes it's a substitute in this formula, but it's not a substitute in other formulas. So,
Good.
so that would be a good example for it.
Okay, good, good. All right. So that's how you can create, that's the tool that's used to create batches today. We acknowledge that this is on one hand functional. It can convert a planned order to a batch ticket. It was certainly met the requirement put to development of please do this. But probably what's going to end up happening, we haven't actually talked about the deployment of this, I don't think, is probably somewhere in here say go create batch. And so we just create it. Don't hold me to that because I haven't seen anything on that, but he's the one that makes that call.
It'll probably be select the planned orders visually and then there'll be a toolbar button that says create batches. So then it'll do basically the same kind of thing that you do.
We
what
just
Randy
showed.
just showed. You shall visually be able to select the plan original and create.
Good.
The challenge again is just the amount, there's a lot of data behind the batch. The challenge is just managing the amount of time, the amount of data that you need to process to get a reasonable result.
This has come, when we went from version 2 to version 4 on this, it's sped up tenfold. I mean, it was much, much, much faster.
Create batches is hugely,
Yeah.
create batches is very slow in V2,
Yeah.
V4 it's.
I used
And
to have
part
a
of that
crash
is just the
on,
amount of data we don't pass back and forth.
on 2, if I had to, basically I had to set a limit, you know. I
Yeah.
could only do this many.
Because it'd
because
time
would
out.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
crash on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
V4, like I said, the customer is processing, I don't know the actual count, it's over 100 batches. And it's almost, I'm not gonna say it's instantaneous, but where they had to wait and wait and wait and almost time out. In fact, I actually had to give them a different version of V2 because of the memory usage they would use and it would blow it up. So V4, none of those issues exist.
Right.
It's just that we just did it completely differently. But again, part of that is the expense of not packaging around batch objects for each batch you see on the screen.
Having the entire formula there, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we had to make some compromises for speed and usability.